وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. في البدء نرحب بسماحة السيد شين عباس رضوي في حضوره معنا في هذه المناسبة العظيمة. هذه الليلة تمر بنا ذكرى شهادة ورحيل ثامن الحجج الإمام علي بن موسى الرضا سلام الله عليه، ونحن في مناسبات أهل البيت سلام الله عليهم أحاول في هذه المحاضرة القصيرة أن نتوقف عند محطات مهمة في حياة الإمام سلام الله عليه لنستفيد منها ولتكون لنا فيها من العبر والدروس الكثيرة. القضية الأولى التي أريد أن أتحدث عنها وهي رسالة الإمام الرضا سلام الله عليه إلى ولده الإمام محمد الجواد سلام الله عليه عندما كان في المدينة والإمام كان في خراسان. وصلت للإمام سلام الله عليه أخبار أن الإمام الجواد وكان صغيرا، يعني الإمام الجواد عندما استلم الإمامة من بعد أبيه وكان عمره صغيرا 7 سنوات، الإمامة المبكرة بل الإمامة المعجزة لأهل البيت سلام الله عليهم. الإمام الرضا وصلت إليه أخبار أن الإمام الجواد عندما يخرج من داره، تدرون الدور سابقا فيها باب من الأمام وفيها باب من الخلف، كانت بيوت كبيرة. الخدم الحشم الذين كانوا عند الإمام سلام الله عليه عند الإمام الجواد، تدري بعض الخدم يصيرون بعضهم شوي يصيرون بخلاء، يطلعون الإمام من الباب الخلفي، لأن تدري بعض الناس اللي عندهم حوائج من السائلين من الفقراء ينتظرون خروج الإمام من الباب الطبيعي وهي الباب الأمامية للبيت واجهة البيت. هؤلاء استكثروا على الإمام الجواد عندما يخرج أن يقول لك من يعطي هذه الأموال لهؤلاء، فلنخرجه من الباب الخلفي حتى بعد ما حد يركض وراء الإمام أو يتابع الإمام سلام الله عليه. تناهت إلى الإمام الرضا هذه القضية. شوف متابعة، وهي قضية هم درس مهم في حياتنا أيها الإخوة، أن أهل البيت يتابعون أولادهم، يتابعوا أولادنا. وإحنا من خلال هذه المناسبة العظيمة للإمام سلام الله عليه نسلط على هذه القضية المهمة في حياة الإمام الرضا والجواد. شوف كيف يستثمر الإمام هذه القضية ويوجه ولده في هذه القضية. يكتب له رسالة، يبعث لرسول ويكتب له رسالة. هذه الرسالة رواها الشيخ الصدوق في كتابه عيون أخبار الرضا، وهذا الكتاب من الكتب الجليلة واقعا للشيخ الصدوق الذي جمع فيها عيون أخبار الإمام وأخبار الإمام الرضا سلام الله عليه كثيرا. احنا لو نستعرض الوقت ما نريد نطيل فيه. أعظم عصر مر به أئمة أهل البيت سلام الله عليهم بعد الإمام الباقر والصادق اللي كان يسمى بالعصر الذهبي الأول، لكن عصر الإمام الرضا سلام الله عليه كان يسمى بالعصر الذهبي الثاني، وهو كان أكبر عصر مر به الإمام. لماذا؟ لأن الإمام طويت له ولاية العهد، فكان عندما يتكلم وعندما يتحدث روى المؤرخون والمحدثون الأخبار الكثيرة. من هنا مثلا الخطيب البغدادي صاحب كتاب تاريخ في تاريخه يقول نقل الرواة عن الأسئلة التي وجهت إلى الإمام الرضا، وكانت إعدادها كما يعبر الخطيب البغدادي وهو من العامة، يقول 18,000 سؤال وجه للإمام سلام الله عليه. هسه واحد يقول لك هذا شنو من مجلس؟ أنا أعتقد وهو الواقع أن الإمام عندما تحدث في ذلك المجلس كان هذا المجلس عبارة عن حلقات وليالي وأيام متتالية، وإلا كيف يستطيع الإمام أن يجيب على هذا الكم الهائل من الأسئلة في قضايا التوحيد وفي النبوة وفي القرآن وفي فضائل أهل البيت سلام الله عليهم وفي حواراته مع النصارى ومع المجوس ومع اليهود ومع غيرهم من الفرق المنحرفة والضالة آنذاك الإمام. إذن هذا المجلس الذي أفرد للإمام كانت أيام طويلة، لهذا الإمام أجاب على هذه الأسئلة الكثيرة. وهي الأسئلة مو احنا نقولها فقط، وإنما أهل السير والتاريخ والحديث كالخطيب البغدادي في تاريخه عندما يروي هذه الرواية أن الإمام أجاب في مجلس المأمون 18,000 سؤال. الإمام نرجع إلى هذه الرسالة العظيمة التي نقلها الشيخ الصدوق في عيون أخبار الرضا. يقول أن الإمام الرضا أرسل رسالة إلى ولده أبي جعفر الجواد، محمد الجواد، ذكر فيها يا أبا جعفر. يعني شوف، وهاي هم فتشي لطيف واحد أن يكني أولاده. كنية الأولاد هاي من سنن ومن سيرة النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وسيرة أهل البيت، حتى يعطيه مركزية، يعطيه قوة، يعطيه عنفوان في حياته. أنت عندما ابنك تكنيه بكنية ترفع من مقامه من مستواه. يقول له يا أبا جعفر بلغني أن الموالي يعني العبيد أو الخدم إذا ركبت أخرجوك من الباب الصغير، يعني الباب الآخر مو الباب الكبير، فإنما ذلك منهم، يعني هؤلاء يقول من بخل منهم، لئلا ينال منك أحد خيرا، وأسألك. ثم شوف الإمام يرجو من ولده، يقول له وأسألك بحقي عليك لا يكن مدخلك ومخرجك إلا من الباب الكبير بعد من حيث الناس، فإذا ركبت فليكن معك ذهب وفضة، ثم لا يسألك أحد إلا أعطيته. فتسأل علي هذا عنده ما عنده. احنا مرات مثلا عندما نعطي أو ننفق إلى الآخرين نقول هذا يستحق لو ما يستحق. أهل البيت سلام الله عليهم عطاؤهم إلى الناس وإلى الآخرين عطاء غير مجدود غير منقطع، للسائل ولغيره، للمستحق ولغيره، إلا أعطيته. ثم يبين الإمام الهدف من هذا العطاء الذي أراده سلام. إنما أريد بذلك بهذا العطاء أن يرفعك الله فأنفق ولا تخشى من ذي العرش اقتارا. لا تخاف، الإنفاق يجيب لك أموال. لا تخشى من ذي العرش من الله سبحانه وتعالى اقتارا. لنقف على هذه الرسالة المهمة واقعا للإمام سلام الله عليه، كيف يؤدب وكيف يربي. وهي درس مهم وعبرة لنا أيها الإخوة من هذه الرسالة العظيمة للإمام سلام الله عليه. أراد الإمام أن يشير إلى 3 أمور مهمة في هذه الرسالة. الأمر الأول أن يربي الإمام التربية على العطاء، أن تربي أولادك على العطاء، لا يصير بخيل. خلي ابنك ينفق، يعطي، يبذل. وهي صفة رائعة عند الإنسان عندما يشجع أولاده على العطاء وعلى الإنفاق. حتى لو أنت عندك، أنت لو ابنك فلوس قل له روح هذا فقير روح انطيه، أو روح قدم هذا العمل أو هذه المساعدة أو هذا العمل الخيري تقوم به. وهي نشجع أولادنا على هذه القضية المهمة. إذن الإنفاق هو ما دعا إليه الله سبحانه وتعالى من خلال كتابه: يا أيها الذين آمنوا أنفقوا مما رزقناكم من قبل أن يأتي يوم لا بيع فيه ولا خلة ولا شفاعة. وقد جعل الله سبحانه وتعالى
السبيل لبلوغ ما عنده عندما قال آمنوا بالله ورسوله وأنفقوا مما جعلكم مستخلفين فيه فالذين آمنوا وأنفقوا لهم أمر كبير. والباب الإنفاق باب لكسب الدنيا، وهو قوله وما أنفقتم من شيء فهو يخلفه الله سبحانه وتعالى. عندما تنفق يخلف لهذا الإنفاق ولهذا العطاء، وهو خير الرازقين. لذا ورد في الحديث عن أهل البيت سلام الله عليهم ما نقص مال من صدقة قط فأعطوا ولا تجبنوا. لا يصير جبان بالعطاء فليعطي. إذن متابعة الأولاد وتوجيههم من قبل الإمام سلام الله عليه. الدرس الثاني هذا الذي نستفيده من هذه الرسالة واقعا العظيمة للإمام سلام الله، وهو يتابع أولاده حتى في هذه القضية البسيطة وهي قضية الإنفاق. هذا فيها يعني الإمام جاء يتابع أولاده ويعطينا درس الإمام سلام الله عليه كيف نتابع أولادنا، لا ندع من لا يريدون خيرا لهم. وإحنا خصوصا الآن أيها الإخوة الكثير، مو فقط هؤلاء إذا كان هؤلاء الحشم أو الخدم أو الموالي الذين منعوا الإمام الجواد وبخلوا الإمام سلام الله عليه، يقول أن هؤلاء هو المفروض احنا ما نتأثر بهم، يعني يوصي ولده سلام الله عليه هؤلاء الذين لا يريدون لأولادنا خيرا. من هذا الدرس المهم وما أكثر ما نعيشه هذه الأيام أيها الإخوة الذين لا يريدون لأولادنا خيرا، وخصوصا ونحن أمام هذا العالم، عالم الفضاء، هذا العالم شبكات التواصل الاجتماعي مع شديد الأسف. يعني احنا عندما نعطي لأولادنا تليفون نقال وفيه نت، هذا العالم الخيالي أو هذا العالم الواسع، يعني احنا مو فقط نخرج أولادنا إلى الدنيا ونتركهم، المفروض نتابعهم. شو هاي متابعة الإمام في قضية بسيطة، هذا درس إنك كما ذكرت. فإذا متابعة أولادنا، احنا أمام هذا الكم الهائل. أنا عندما أعطي ولدي تليفون نقال وفيه نت أتركه أمام هذه الغابات والتي فيها من الوحوش الكاسرة واقعا، وفيها من الصيادين الماهرين في هذه الغابة الموحشة، شبكات التواصل وما فيها من الأفكار الهدامة، الأفكار الضالة، الأفكار المضلة، العقائد الفاسدة. الآن وخصوصا ونحن الآن نعيش في قضية هذه القضية التي ملأت الآفاق وهي المثلية واقعا. أولادنا إن لم نحصنهم، إن لم نتابعهم أيها الإخوة، فما أكثر هؤلاء الصيادون في هذه الغابة الموحشة من شبكات التواصل الاجتماعي. صحيح هذه الشبكات فيها من الخير، فيها الخير، ولكن فيها الشر الكثير. إن لم نراقب ونحاسب وندقق مع أولادنا فإن أولادنا سوف يضيعون أمام هذه الغابة الموحشة التي نعيش فيها. إذن الأمر الآخر للإمام سلام الله عليه، الأمر الأخير في هذه الرسالة، الاهتمام بأمر الآخرة لأولادنا. إحنا مو بس أولادنا نطلعهم للدنيا، نهتم بهم إلى آخرتهم، مو فقط لدنياهم. كما نهتم بأمر دنياهم علينا أن نهتم بأمر آخرتهم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا، القرآن الكريم ينادي يا أيها الذين آمنوا قوا أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا وقودها الناس والحجارة عليها ملائكة غلاظ لا يعصون الله ما أمرهم ويفعلون ما يؤمرون. وعندما قال إن الخاسرين الذين خسروا أنفسهم وبعد منه وأهليهم، أهليهم منه الأبناء والزوجات. إن الخاسرين الذين خسروا أنفسهم وأهليهم بالدنيا يوم القيامة فإذا شوف متابعة الإمام سلام الله عليه في هذه القضية المهمة. من هنا نجد أئمة أهل البيت سلام الله عليهم كما ورد في رسالة الحقوق للإمام زين العابدين سلام الله عليه عندما يقول: وأما حق ولدك فأن تعلم أنه منك ومضاف إليك في عامل الدنيا بخيره وشره، وأنك مسؤول عما وليته من حسن الأدب والدلالة على ربه عز وجل والمعونة له على طاعته، فاعمل في أمره عمل من يعلم أنه مثاب على الإحسان إليه ومعاقب على الإساءة إليه. وقد ورد في الحديث: ميراث الله من عبده المؤمن ولد صالح يستغفر له. هذا أعظم الميراث. فلهذا هذه الوصية أو هذه الكلمات الخالدة للإمام سلام الله عليه، وهو يهتم بأمر آخرة ابنه مو بس في الدنيا إلا في الآخرة. ولذلك كان علي سلام الله عليه يقول: ما سألت ربي أولادا نظر الوجه. يقول: أنا ما طلبت من الله حتى يصيرون أولادي مثلا جميلين أو حلوين، ولا سألته ولد حسن القامة، ولكن سألت ربي أولادا مطيعين لله وجلين منه، يعني يخافون منه، حتى إذا نظرت إليه وهو مطيع لله قرت عيني. الولد يكون قرة عين لك عندما يكون مطيعا لله سبحانه وتعالى. ونتذكر دائما قصة السيد المسيح على نبينا وعليه أفضل التحية والسلام عندما خرج ومعه الحواريون وخرج إلى مقبرة، يقولون توقف إلى جانب قبر، قال لهم أن صاحب هذا القبر يعذب الآن في قبره، يعذب في قبره. طبعا الوحي أوحى إليه بذلك. ثم بعد ذلك يقول مر في العام القادم، يعني بعد سنة، مر على هذه المقبرة ووقف على ذلك القبر وقال لأصحابه أن صاحب هذا القبر هذا العام لا يعذب في قبره. هم كذلك أوحى الله تعالى له أنه ولد له ولد فأصلح طريقا وآوى يتيما فغفرت له بسبب ولده. إذن أيها الإخوة أيها الأحبة، أولادنا هم ذخرنا في الدنيا بين الناس، وهم ذخرنا عندما نقف بين يدي الله سبحانه وتعالى. هذا درس من دروس الإمام الرضا سلام الله عليه. أكتفي بهذا القدر اليسير عن حياة الإمام سلام الله عليه، لأن عندنا برنامج للأخوة الأحبة من إخواننا الباكستانيين والجالية الأخرى من الإخوة الأفغان. أختم بالسلام عليك يا شمس الشموس وأنيس النفوس أيها المدفون بأرض طوس. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء. السلام عليك أيها العبد الصالح والولي الناصح يا ابن رسول الله ورحمة الله وبركاته. والسلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.
I'm going to recite a salam, eulogy in Urdu. Salawat wa Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. کہتی تھی یہی زینب دکھیا، کہتی یہی زینب دکھیا، میرے بیرنوا مجرا لو میرا، کچھ بات کرو میں تم پہ فدا، کچھ بات کرو میں تم پہ فدا، میرے بیرنوا مجرا لو میرا، میں کوک جلی ماں جائی ہوں، ہمشیر تمہاری بھائی ہوں، زندان سے چھٹ کر آئی ہوں، زندان سے چھٹ کر آئی ہوں، میرے بیرنوا مجرا لو میرا، اکبر بھی نہیں عباس نہیں، قاسم سبتی جا پاس نہیں، اب مجھ کو کسی کی آس نہیں، اب مجھ کو کسی کی آس نہیں، میرے بیرنوا مجرا لو میرا، زندان میں گئی دربار گئی، سر ننگے سرے بازار گئی، بنت ذلیل و خوار گئی، بنت ذلیل و خوار گئی، میرے بیرنوا مجرا لو میرا، پوچھے گی اگر مجھ سے سغرا، ہے باپ پھوپھی کس جا میرا، کیا اسے کہوں بھولو بھیا، کیا اسے کہوں بولو بھیا، میرے بیرنوا مجرا لو میرا، کہتی تھی یہی صلوات محمد وعلی محمد، اللہم صل علی محمد۔ صلوا علی محمد وعلی محمد، اللہم صل علی محمد وعلی محمد۔ I'm here to introduce to our community, so it's my honor to introduce our speaker tonight, Sayyid Shaan Abbas Rizvi, to the community. So a little bit about him. He grew up in upstate New York. where he did his undergraduate and law degrees at one of the best schools in the country. So after practicing as a lawyer, as an attorney here in the US, he then decided to take the path of religious education and did 5 years in the Islamic seminary in Chicago. And thereafter he went to Qum and has recently come back and is currently helping run one of the few K through 12 schools, Shia schools in the country. So please welcome him with your loudest salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين فاطر السماوات والأرضين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. ولعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. عما بعد. الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المبين وهو أصدق الصادقين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. إن الله عليم خبير. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Dear brothers in Iman and Islam, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First and foremost, أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصابنا بالحسين عليه السلام. May Allah magnify your reward and our reward for the remembrance of the tragedy of Imam al-Hussein. It's a pleasure to be here, an honor to be invited to speak at this Islamic Center. I would like to first appreciate Samahat Sheikh for the comments regarding the life of Imam al-Rida. It was something very beneficial that I hope we can take part in and I hope we can get a lesson from. And my comments will also be in line with what the Sheikh said. So just in line with the same ideas that he's presented, I will also be speaking on the same topic. So inshallah, if you can please recite a salawat. When I was invited to this community by Brother Mustafa Javed, he told me a lot of things about the community and some of the strengths of the community, some of the challenges of the community, just like any community in the US that this community is facing. And there are several challenges facing us and facing every community, not just because we are Muslim or Shia, but because of the time we are living in, and the age in which we are living, and the circumstances in which we are living. And of course, through a lecture, we are not going to be able to solve all of those problems. There is no magic pill that will help us cure those problems just in one night or 2 nights or 3 nights. But what I would like to do is to begin to present some ideas to you about how to think about some of these challenges we're facing and start taking some steps in the right direction. One of the challenges that he mentioned and that I think is very evident is that in many communities there is, unfortunately in the Shia world, we have a lot of division amongst racial and ethnic lines. And we see that our centers are often divided such that there is an Indian and Pakistani center in one place, and an Iraqi center in one place, and an Iranian center in another place, and so on and so forth. And so the topic I've selected is community, and how to build community despite our differences, right? Building a unified, virtuous community together. Okay? Please recite a salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So we'll start off with some basic remarks about community, right? Now, the importance of community is what? Right? The importance of living in community. I apologize, I'm just a little bit tired as I flew in today, but inshallah I'll try as we go through the speech to give myself some energy. Hopefully you can get some energy and give me some as well. But what I would like to start with is the importance of community and the importance of not living in isolation. You see, our deen never, in very few instances do we see is it ever permissible or ever a good idea to live in isolation, right? To live separate from other people. And in fact, in the medical profession, what they say, there are studies that have been done that say that if you live alone, if you are not part of a community, if you are not with other people, right? If you are isolated, right? If you are lonely, then the stress, the effect of that on your body, right, is just as much as any chronic medical condition you can think of, whether it's diabetes, high blood pressure, arthritis, etc. The effect on your body will be just as much, right? Meaning that a person needs community. And we saw during COVID, for example, when we were not able to be together, we saw the effects of not being together. We saw that a lot of our programs were online, were through Zoom. And that didn't give us community. Rather, what that gave us was just a sense of community, right? Nobody says that what we had during that time was the same as being in person, right? And so that shows that a digital community is not received, it does not have the same effect as a community of people actually coming together, like we are here today, right? So what I'd like to do is I'd like to share some ahadith from the Ahlul Bayt, because better than my words are the words of the Ahlul Bayt, right? I'd like to share some words from them, words of wisdom, some ahadith on just this topic of community. And then I would like to speak briefly about the virtuous community in Islam. And finally, I would like to talk a little bit about the need for education and what our community needs are so we can start moving in that direction. Please recite a salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So regarding the importance of living in a community, what does Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says? He says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, la budda lakum minan nas. Inna ahadan la yastaqni anin nas hayatahu wa nasu la budda li ba'dihim min ba'd. Imam Sadiq and these hadith are taken from our hadith book, which is called, one of the hadith books, which is called Usul al-Kafi. Right? Usul al-Kafi was one of the very earliest collections of Shia hadith that we have, that was right after the time of the 11th and 12th Imam, which this was compiled. Right? So this is one of the most authentic, many of the most authentic narrations we have in the Shia tradition are taken from this collection. So Imam Sadiq says that there's no escape from living with people, meaning it's necessary to live amongst people. No one from amongst you can be entirely independent in his or her life. People need each other. Right? So nobody of you can survive without being in community. People need to live with one another. People need to be in the presence of other people. Now what happens if we refrain from being part of this community? What happens if we try to live by ourselves? If we say that I don't want to be part of the Shia community, I don't want to come to events. So قال Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, al-inqibadu min al-nas muqsibatun lil-adawa. Inqibad min al-nas muqsibatun lil-adawa. Meaning that refraining from people, refraining from community causes adawa. It causes enmity. Right? If I'm the person that never comes to the community, you never see me, right? I never invite you to my house, I never come, I never volunteer here, I never want to help out with anything like these brothers are doing, I never come set up the chairs, I never serve food, if I never speak, right? Then what's going to happen is that you will start having enmity towards me. You'll say, where is this person? Right? So Imam Sadiq is saying that if you are not part of community, then people are going to start disliking you. Right? That will cause enmity. Now, if that's the case, then what are the actions that we can take that will build our community? Right? What are the basic things we need to do to build our community? Right? And this is again one of those things where, we talk about the Ahlul Bayt as, we talk about the Holy Quran as a miracle, as a mu'jiza. We talk about the words of the Ahlul Bayt as being divine. And that's one of the things that is difficult to prove. But when I started studying this subject in the Hawza, which in this particular case, this bab is called Kitab al-Ishra, the book of relationships, Kitab al-Ishra. So this is about how we relate to one another, right? How we relate to one another. And when I read these ahadith, they were really beautiful. Because just in a few words, the Imam is able to give us advice about what our community relationships should be like. And those words are so simple and so deep. Right? Al-inqibad min al-nas muqsibatun lil-adawa. Like if you stay away from people, then there will be enmity between you two. Right? So there's very deep meanings there. Right? And similarly, all the other hadith where I realized like this is something that if you really were to think about these hadith and apply them, right, they really can change your life. They can change your community. Please recite salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. So what is the minimum we should be doing to basically establish these relationships in our community? Right, so then somebody asked Imam Sadiq, قلت لأبي عبد الله عليه السلام كيف ينبغي لنا أن نصنع فيما بيننا وبين قومنا وفيما بيننا وبين خلطائنا من الناس فقال تؤدون الأمانة إليهم وتقيمون الشهادة لهم وعليهم وتعودون مرضاهم وتشهدون جنائزهم. So somebody came to the Imam and asked that how should we be with people in our own qawm, meaning people in our community. Not only that, how should we be with people who are outside of our community? Right? How should we be with other people? And the Imam said that you should do four things. You should give them their trusts, give them their amana. If they trust you with something, then give that back to them. Number two, you should be a witness for them and a witness against them. Meaning what? Meaning that if they have done something good, you testify for them. If they have done something bad, you testify against them. Number three, you should visit their sick. If somebody amongst you has a family member that is sick, or one of you is sick, you should visit each other while you are sick, the Imam is saying. And number four, you should attend their funerals. You should attend their janaiz, their funerals. Right, so what can we take from this hadith? In this hadith, the Imam is saying that one of the basic things that builds community is actions. Right? Actions, not words. What I'm doing is the easy part. And you stand up here, you say some things, right? The harder thing is actually taking those steps, visiting each other, seeing each other, attending the janazah, attending the walima, attending the nikah, the aqd, right? Going to the majlis of this brother, that brother. Okay, if you do this, then that's going to build your community. Right? Sometimes we think that just sending a message is enough, sending a text message, but the Imam is saying, no, do these things. Right? Go visit them, be with the people. Now, are there other actions that can also build community? Right? Are there other actions? This is also a very, very subtle and deep hadith. قال أبو عبد الله عليه السلام التواصل بين الإخوان في الحذر التزاور التواصل بين الإخوان في الحذر التزاور وفي السفر التكاتب. That tawasul, meaning that connection between ikhwan, between brothers that are present with each other, right? That live in the same locality, that live in the same city, is what? Tazawur. Tazawur. Which means that we do the ziyarah of each other. Right? Tazawur means I visit you, you visit me. Right? There's one ziyarah of the imam, but there's also a ziyarah of a mu'min. So the imam is referring to the ziyarah of the mu'min. What is he saying? The connection between you and I, if we are living in the same city, comes through tazawur, comes through visiting each other, being in each other's presence, right? Seeing each other, spending time with each other. وَفِي السَّفَرِ التَّكَاتُبِ. And if we are traveling, meaning you go somewhere else, I live in another city, then our connection is through writing to each other. Right? Through writing to each other. It doesn't have to be a written letter, it can be an email, it can be a text message, etc., etc. But the Imam is showing how we maintain that connection. Right? So this is extremely important in the West, where we are living far from each other, where we do not have regular meetings. At the very least, we can try to see each other on a regular basis. I go to your house, you come to mine. We don't have a formal relationship. Right? This tazawur, this idea of visiting each other, right? Really this will build our community. Just starting with tazawur, you don't have to do anything else. I want to come to your house for chai, right? For tea, right? That's all, and I want to see you. You don't have to give me food, you don't have to give me dinner, just spending time together is going to build our community. Please recite a salawat. The verse of the Holy Quran that we read says, Ya ayyuhan nas inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha wa ja'alnakum shu'uba wa qaba'ila lita'arafu. That we created mankind, we created an-nas, human beings, into various tribes, into various communities, so that they might know each other. So that they might know each other. And this is a very deep point, that one of the very beautiful things about human life is the diversity that we live in, right? The fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked us, has made us such that we are of different cultures. Right? As he says in this holy verse, we are of different communities, different cultures. Why? لِتَعَارَفُوا. So that we can get to know one another. The verse says he created us in different communities, different cultures, so that we know one another. Right? So that we know one another. Right? And there's one distinguishing factor which the verse says, إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. Right? That fundamentally we are all equal. But the best of you is the one with taqwa. The best of you is the one with the most taqwa. أَتْقَاكُمْ. Right? And I'm saying this as a reminder for myself, first and foremost, because I need to hear these words from time to time, and then inshallah you can also benefit from these words just like me. Please recite salawat. And this is manifested most beautifully in the Hajj pilgrimage. That when you go for Hajj, right, it doesn't matter whether you are brown, whether you are white, how rich you are, how poor you are, whether you are from a certain family, whether you are from a certain profession, whether you're old or young, what your physical physique is, whether you're a man or a woman, a child or an adult. Right? Everybody on this pilgrimage that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has asked us to take is wearing the exact same clothes, is doing the exact same thing, is facing the exact same qibla, right? And this is a manifestation of the fact that at our core, Right? At our core, there's fundamentally something that makes us human. Right? There's something that makes us a human being, that makes us equal to each other, right? In the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with only one distinguishing factor, which is our taqwa. Which is our taqwa. Right? So now, part of human culture is that naturally we are going to focus on difference. Right? Naturally, we are going to make judgments. This is the way that human being has been made. If I hear about something happening in another country or some scandal happening, I will pay attention. If I see you, I will try to find what is similar between us and what is different between us. Right? So this is a natural human behavior. And in fact, they have done studies to see, right, and what they have found is that when people are from the same culture, when people are from the exact same background, those cultures where everything is homogeneous, people look the same, people dress the same, people act the same, people have the same religion, the same skin color, in those societies, people tend to be more giving. Right? They tend to give more sadaqah, more wealth. Right? Why? Because if you look like me, you talk like me, you dress like me, you're of the same religion as me, then if you're going through a hard time, then I want to help you. Right? If you are of a different religion, different social ethnic class, speak a different language, etc., 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 then it's difficult for me to relate to you. Right? So this is a natural human phenomenon. And even on the level of personality, we do this, right? We self-segregate. For example, if I am a very easygoing person, right? If I am very lax and very easygoing and very flexible, and you are very quick to make decisions and very strong-willed, right, then what do I say? I say that you are stubborn. Right, I say you're stubborn. On the other hand, if I am the one who is strong-willed, if I am the one who makes decisions quickly, and you are the one who's very laid back, you are the one who's very flexible, then what do I say? I say that you can't make up your mind. Right? It's hard for you to make up your mind. So human being is always doing this, right? Human being always, he's looking for the difference. Right? And he's saying that focus on this difference and see how I am versus see how you are, and let's find the difference between us. And as we said many times, if a society is homogeneous, then people will be willing to give more. They'll be willing to share more with other people. And as we said, this is a natural human phenomenon. But in Islam, we believe that there is a sanctity, there is a taqaddus, right, to this community of people who share the same values as us, who share the same beliefs as us, who have wilayah to the same leaders as we do. That when that community comes together on the basis of those values, on the basis of those beliefs, and they act and live in accordance with those values, then that is something that is very rare in human society and human civilization. Most communities are based on ethnicity. They are based on race. They are based on shahwa, right? They are based on lust, on some fun activity, right? It is very rare to have a community of people that are based on shared values, shared principles, shared aspirations, shared attachment to certain leaders, right? And when you have that, then you have a virtuous Muslim community, and that is very rare. Why? Because it's going against all those tendencies that are natural in a human being. Those tendencies I just talked about, within a country, within a person, those are natural tendencies. Right? If you are Iraqi and I am Iraqi, or let's say for example, if you are Pakistani and I'm Pakistani, then I would want to spend more time with you. Right? I have more affinity to you. But in an Islamic community, if I can bridge that gap, and I can see that based on my values, based on the way I see the world, based on my belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet and the Imams, that I can treat you the same way as I treat anyone from my own community, then I have bridged the gap. Okay? then I have bridged the gap into connecting with you on a different basis. Connecting with you on the basis of Iman. Connecting with you on the basis of Taqwa. Connecting with you on the basis of Ukhuwa. Connecting with you on the basis of Wilaya. It's not about my race. It's not about who knows more, my profession, what you do, how old you are. Our basis is something else. Our relationship is because we have that shared wilaya of each other and towards the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt. Right now this is something different now. Now this community looks very different. And please recite salawat. And we have to ask that when we look in early Muslim history, when we look at the very beginning of the Islamic period, we see that this is exactly what is happening during the time of the Prophet. Right? During the time of the Prophet, do you think that this is, how do you think that he was able to bring people from different backgrounds around himself? Right? How do you think he was able to bring people towards himself? Because if you look at his followers were people like who? Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, right? Who was from a tribe of Arabs who were known to be basically what you would call highway robbers, right? They were kind of rough people, right? If you think of them, you could think of them today, for example, as those motorcyclists, right? The ones with the tattoos, right? Who ride down and they're very tough people, right? Very rough, right? He's from a people like this, okay? Or, for example, Salman al-Farsi, right? Who is not Arab, he's Persian, and he is from a different religion, Zoroastrian. And by the way, he's also a freed slave. And then after he's Zoroastrian, he becomes Christian until he meets the Prophet of Islam and he becomes Muslim. Right? Or, for example, Hussein ibn Salam, who is a Jewish rabbi, right? From the tribe of Bani Qaynuqa, who accepted Islam. What was it that was bringing these people to the Prophet? And what was it that he was able to get different people from different backgrounds to come to him and basically affiliate themselves with him and say Muhammadur Rasulullah, right? Say that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. And this is something that it only came through that wilaya that existed between the mu'mineen. And you can see that also, right, through this first aqaba that happened between the Prophet and people from the tribes of Aus and Khazraj. Right? Aus and Khazraj were two tribes that were fighting. Now, many people know that, the Prophet went to Medina and he united these two tribes, but one of the things they don't know about these tribes is that even before the Prophet migrated to Medina, right, he had a relationship with these tribes, with Aus and Khazraj. And even before the Hijrah, these tribes would occasionally come to Mecca to perform the pilgrimage. Right? So one of those times before the Hijrah, there was 12 men who came from the Aus and the Khazraj. And at the first Aqaba, basically these people had been fighting a lot. But what happened is that 12 people from these two tribes, they made a promise or a pact to Prophet Muhammad. What did they say? They said that we pledged our allegiance to the Messenger of Allah, that we would not associate anything with Allah, basically we would not do shirk, that we would not steal, that we would not do zina, that we would not kill our children, that we would not do slander, and that we would not disobey the Prophet in that which was right. And he said, if you do this, then paradise is yours, and if you do one of the sins, then you will either receive punishment in this world or punishment in the next world. Right? So what was it that allowed these people who were from different tribes, not followers of the Prophet, right, who had no conception of these precepts of Islam, to now follow the Prophet in this? Right? It was again that commitment to those social and ethical ideals that transcended tribal affiliation, that transcended racial affiliation, that transcended affiliation based on class. Right? That's something that is very rare in human history. We don't have a lot of examples of that. Please recite salawat. And I want to just speak frankly here for a second, that one of the advantages, and speak from my personal experience, that one of the advantages that you all have, right, despite the challenges of being a small community, are that in a small community, you also have a diverse community, right? You also have people from different backgrounds, different races and ethnicities. And I also grew up in a small community. I grew up in a very small community, and not only was it a small Shia community, but it was a mixed Shia-Sunni community. Because it was so small, it had to be a mixed community. And I can tell you from my own experience, there's a lot of advantages to being in a small community. Obviously, one advantage is you get to know people better. As there's fewer people, you can build a relationship. But another advantage of this diversity that you have even in this community is that you get to meet and get to know Muslims from all over the world. From various countries. And I had that experience that when I was growing up in my own community, it was not just people from my Indian and Pakistani background, there were also Iraqis, there were also Iranians, there was also Turks, there were Bosnians, there were people from Africa, there were people from Egypt, there were people from Saudi Arabia, people from Malaysia. And I got to know all of these people, and one of the advantages for me as a child when I was growing up was that I saw that Islam was not just a cultural practice. Right? It wasn't just limited to one culture. It wasn't just limited to one people. Rather, I saw how Islam was something that was universal across various cultures. And more so, I saw that the practices that certain cultures have might be associated with those cultures, but they may not be Islam. Right? Not everything that we are doing has a basis in Islam. Sometimes we are doing it on the basis of culture. And so because I was exposed to different cultures, I saw that some of these things that I was growing up with were cultural. And that was still beautiful. Some people did certain things a certain way. Right? People celebrated the night before Eid a certain way. Another community did that a different way. Right? And that was okay. So I had that exposure which allowed me to realize that this is a universal religion for all people, not just for one people. Right? And so that is a strength of you all. That because it is so small, you are able to bring in people from different backgrounds, different communities. And as communities grow, they tend to become divided. Right? This community is small. Many communities, for example, I'm from Houston. Right? Many communities across the country, they start out small. What happens is that as they get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, well, then the Iraqis start that center, the Pakistanis have this center, the Khojas have this center, the Africans have that center, etc., etc., etc. Right? And then at the end of it, you're wondering, where is the Islamic Center? Right? Where did the Islamic Center go? Because we know the other ones are here, right? So you have an opportunity here, right? That if your community is small, you can still work together. Right? You can still work together. Now, sometimes what happens in a mixed community is that you're working towards the same goal, right? But you have a different way to get there. Please recite salawat. Sometimes you're working towards the same goal. But one community wants to get there in a certain way, another community wants to get there in a different way. Right? Never confuse the goal with the method. Right? Our goal is always the same. Right? We see the alam of Abdullah here. Right? That alam, right? I'm walking behind that alam, you're also walking behind that alam and that flag. Right? We're walking with the same alam. But now the method, the way that we serve Abdullah might be a little bit different. Right? But the goal is the same. Okay, so many times this happens in community where people get offended at small things. So I'll give you an example. In Houston, right, for example, on the day of Ashura, we have a custom in the Indian and Pakistani community. It's called Fata Shikli. I don't know what the term is in Arabic, but basically they fast for half the day. They don't eat anything until Asr. But it's not a Shari fast. Right? You're not fasting, you're just not eating food until about 2 p.m., 3 p.m., and then you eat something. So it's called Fatah Shikni. So many Indians and Pakistanis observe this. Iranians also do this, where they don't eat anything. Now, what happened was that the Indian and Pakistani community, they are used to eating, many of them in that community, they were used to having something very simple on the day of Ashura when they eat their food. So they say, for example, that we are going to have the simplest food that we eat, which is dal chawal. Dal chawal. Dal chawal is rice with lentils. It's a very simple food. Right? The very basic food you can eat is called dal chawal. But in the same community, there were Iranians, right? And the Iranians, what did they make? They made khayme. Right? Khayme, which for them was a very special type of dish. Right? Why? Because it had ground beef, it had eggplant in it, it had lentils in it, it had little potato chips on top, it was in rice, it looked very nice, it tasted good. Right? So now the Desis say, you know, this is the day of Ashura. Like, we are supposed to eat the simplest food possible. Right? What is this you guys are serving on the day of Ashura? Right? And the Iranians say, like, no, we, because it is the day our Imam died, we want to do taqreeb of the Imam. We want to honor our Imam. So therefore, we give the best possible food to the people who come to the majlis of Imam Hussein on this day. And so the Desis say, oh, okay, I didn't understand that is why you're giving this fancy food, because nobody in our culture gives food like this. Right? And similarly, the Iranians are saying, I don't know why you're serving such simple food, but when we talked about it, then they understood that, oh, okay, this is not an insult to the Imam, this is because you want to be simple. That is your way of honoring the Imam. Just like we are honoring the Imam through giving him this meal, you are honoring him through your meal. So what that shows is that sometimes the goal, the hadaf, is the same, but the method is different. Right? So one person is going this way, one person is going that way. Right? And sometimes in a mixed community, you have to navigate this. Right? Please recite a salawat. Inshallah, wrapping up now, and as they say in Urdu, zahmat tamam, the zahmat will be over. Because it's, you know, been speaking for a long time, so inshallah I can conclude and we'll go into musibah, inshallah, for a few minutes as well. The last few things I'd like to say, right? Now that we have talked about community, right, and kind of some of the challenges of living in a community that is mixed, different cultures, different backgrounds, and what our goals should be. What function should that community play? Right? What function should we have as a community? It's not just to get together to drink chai, right? It's not just to see each other and have a cup of tea and go home, right? That's not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the Prophet and the Imams for, was just so you and I can just have fun, right? That was never the goal, right? One of the things that we are responsible for is passing the deen on to our children, right? Passing the deen on to our children. Why? Because at some level we made a decision to live here. Right? We made a decision to live in the United States of America, which is not friendly to any religion, by the way. Not just Islam, but it is becoming very difficult for Jews and Christians and people of other faiths to also practice their religion in America. Right? It's very difficult. Right? As the Mahto Sheikh alluded to, the rise of the LGBTQ movement and various other social movements are putting a lot of pressure on our communities. Right, the technologies that we surround ourselves. Right, so now we have made a decision to live here, right, which means that there is a fair chance that, you know, our children, they are going to be exposed to other ideas, right, and there's not a very high probability that we can automatically assume that they will stay Muslim. Okay, so this is now our responsibility, right, that if we are living here and we know that our religion is under threat, then we have to take this responsibility seriously, right? That our children have to keep the faith. Right? There is right now a crisis that is going on, unfortunately. And, you know, again, I'm speaking from personal experience here as someone who grew up here, that in many universities, for example, you see children who are leaving the deen openly. Right? It's one thing to say, like, I don't practice. Okay, we're not talking about that. Instead, what we are saying is people who are Muslim are saying, I am no longer Muslim. Right? That's a different story. In fact, in my own experience, when I was studying at university in New York, right, at the same time, a little bit before Brother Mushtaba, right, with me entered, I have two people I can tell you, one of whom was from the madhab of Tashayyu, and one of them was from Tasannun, from the Sunni community, one was from the Shia community. Both of them, when they joined university with me, right, they were Muslim. We all participated in the Muslim Students Association together. When we left university 4 years later, out of the whole community, these two people, the Shia brother, the Sunni, they both said that I am not Muslim. Right? Basically what happened was that in those 4 years, they had left Islam. And this is not that uncommon, unfortunately. I wish I could say that this was very uncommon, but this is something that has happened in our community living here in America. Right? So that's a different level, because it's one thing for someone to say humbly that, okay, I don't understand this and I'm not practicing, for example, but on another level, someone goes forward and says, no, I reject this. I'm not Muslim. Right? So now there's a problem. Right? So there's a crisis there, and that's the thing that we need to start to think about for our children, right? For those of us who have young children, or just for the people that we know who are, you know, of age in their teens, 20s, 30s, who are struggling to kind of keep the faith. This is a problem that we have to think about as a community. Please recite a salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, referring to Bani Israel, He says, بِئْسَ مَا اشْتَرَوْا بِهِ أَنفُسَهُمْ أَن يُكَفِّرُوا بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ. That how bad was that thing, how wretched was that thing that they sold themselves for when they did kufr, regarding what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed. How wretched was it, that thing that they got when they gave themselves up in doing kufr. The ta'bir of the Quran is very interesting. It says, اشْتَرَوْا بِهِ أَنفُسَهُمْ. That when they did kufr, they sold themselves. Meaning what? That when they lost their faith, when Bani Israel lost faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they did kufr, they rejected Allah, they gave up their entire self. They gave up their entire souls. So one of the Mufassirin says what? He says that when you lose your iman, you have lost your entire self. When you lose your faith, when you do kufr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have lost your entire self. There's nothing left. If you have lost your faith, you lost everything. And if you have lost your iman, what do you have? What do you have left? What's the difference between you and somebody else here? And there's nothing different. Right? If you lose your iman. So this is the importance of this mas'ala. Now there are different ways, and what I would like to say is I'm going to just open this topic up a little bit. Right? I'll just give some comments about it, and then inshallah I'll also be speaking tomorrow. And tomorrow I will complete this topic and speak more deeply about this, about education and the need to start having some educational sessions together, right, as a community, whether that is in the form of a seminar, whether that is in the form of Sunday school, or some other form, but doing something educational so that we can maintain our iman. Right? There are different ways to have faith. Right? Sometimes people's iman is based on the fact that they grew up in a environment. They grew up in a muhit, right, in a mahol. They saw something around them. Right? And they started copying those things. Right? They saw, for example, that they went to the majlis of Imam Hussein, people were giving chai, people were helping them, you know, people were volunteering, everyone was nice, and that was attractive to them. Right? So that level of faith is good, right? We're not saying that that is bad, right? For children, that is natural. Many children, they learn faith through an environment, through a muhit, right? Something that is surrounding you. But the issue with this is that, number one, it's not based on awareness. It's not based on awareness, right? I'm doing something because I'm seeing it around me, and that's attractive to me, right? Of course, the human fitrah is such that if you see goodness around you, you'll be attracted to it. If I see people being kind, then I will want to be kind. If I see them volunteering, then I will want to volunteer. If I see order and cleanliness, right, then I will want to be more orderly and more cleanly myself. That is how the human fitrah works. And sometimes what we see touches us on an emotional level, touches us on a spiritual level, right? But what I am saying today is that that cannot be enough, right? That cannot be the only thing we have. Right? There has to be something a little bit deeper than that. There has to be an anchor. Right? There has to be something holding us in place. Why? Because if our iman is just based on emotions, if it's just based on participation in majlis, then unfortunately, sometimes that iman will go out the door just as fast as it came. Why? Because it's not rooted in ta'aqqul. Right? It's not rooted in the aql. The root word, aql in Arabic, right? It doesn't actually mean intellect. What does it mean to tie? Right? To tie something. Why? Because when you're using your intellect, there's many reasons, right? Most words in Arabic have multiple meanings, right? But many of those meanings are related to each other. Right? So what is the relationship between aql and between tying something and using your intellect? Well, you use your intellect to tie two different things together, right? I heard this point here, I heard this point here. Let me understand how these fit together and come to a conclusion. Right? So you're tying those 2 points together. Right? Now when you base your faith on hikmah, on ta'aqqul, on istidlal, right? That's when your faith is going to take a deeper root. What I mean by that is that you have to at least have some answers to the questions. Right? Some answers to, for example, why is it that you believe there was a man that lived in 7th century Arabia that was named Prophet Muhammad, that he received wahy. He had a connection to the divine. And why do you believe that? What is your argument? What is your evidence for that? Okay, fine, you accept Prophet Muhammad. Why do you believe that right after the death of Prophet Muhammad, which was a religion revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, why do you believe that the majority of the Muslim community was misguided and followed certain people instead of Amir al-Mu'mineen? Why do you believe it? Right? So now we have to have some answers to this, right? Because the reality is our children are living in a marketplace of ideas. Right? They're being exposed to different types of ideas, and if they don't have the tools to be able to answer them, right, then that iman is not going to be very strong. Now, some people make the objection that, okay, brother, I lived in Pakistan, I lived in India, I lived in Iraq, right? I grew up in the 70s, 80s, 90s, right? And I didn't have to do that, right? But, you know, when you say that, this comparison is apples to oranges comparison. Why? Because your environment that you're living in there is completely different from what your children are growing up in here today. Over there, right? If somebody didn't believe, right? They didn't say that I'm an atheist. They didn't openly say that, right? It was not good to say something like that, right? Over there, it was acceptable, right, to have iman just based on people around you. You weren't exposed, you were not bombarded with different ideas constantly. Right? That world is not the world that your children are living in here. Right? That world is not the world that they are living in. And so we have to start to give them some tools and educate them a little bit on also why we are Muslim. So in addition to the spiritual connection, in addition to the emotional connection, why? Because your iman is not complete without hubb of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, number one. But number two, in order for that iman to be deep, in order for that iman to be rasikh, right? To be deep, then it needs to be anchored in something. Right? It needs to have an anchor. And that anchor, I am making the argument that anchor is that ta'aqqul, that ability to come to conclusions. Please just have a salawat. I'll recite a few words of Musibah and then Zahmat al-Awj. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Sallallahu alayka ya ibna Rasulillah. وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليك مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني بزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين بأبي أنت وأمي يا أبا عبد الله. Ya Abu Abdullah, we wish we were with you in Karbala, or we would have succeeded a great success. Ya Abu Abdullah. Ya Abu Abdullah, we would sacrifice our mothers for you, our daughters for you, our fathers for you. Ya Abu Abdullah. Assalamu alayka ya gharib al-ghuraba, ya Ali ibn Musa al-Rida al-Murtada. On this night we are paying tribute not just to Abu Abdullah, but as Samahat al-Sheikh mentioned, tonight is also the night of Shahada of Imam al-Rida. And Imam al-Rida is known as Gharib al-Ghuraba, meaning that he is the loneliest of the lonely. And he is the loneliest of the lonely. We see that Prophet Muhammad has at least 4 of his descendants, 4 of the holy Imams in Medina. We see Imam Kazim has Imam Taqi alayhi salam in Qadimiyah. Imam Hadi alayhi salam has Imam Askari alayhi salam. Imam Hussain alayhi salam has Aliyan al-Akbar, Aliyan al-Asghar. But when Imam Rida dies in Khurasan, he has nobody else with him. In fact, Hazrat Masuma was on her way to visit Imam Rida in Khurasan, and she dies along the way. So when Imam Rida passes away, that nobody is with him. Al-Ma'mun, he sees that Imam Rida's popularity is on the rise, and so he says, I need to get rid of this man. And so he comes up with a plan to poison the Imam. One of the companions of the Imam, Abu Salt, he goes to Imam Rida and he says that, Imam, I see him, and Imam, you look tired, you look very sad. Is there something wrong, O Imam? Imam Rida says, Abu Salt, I miss Medina. I miss the land of Medina, and I miss my family in Medina. I don't have anybody here with me in Khurasan, and this man, Ma'mun, the Abbasid Khalifa, he tortures me, he humiliates me, but I am ar-Rida. So that means that I am pleased with whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has willed. The narration states that one of Ma'mun's associates brings a poisoned juice in front of Imam ar-Rida. As Imam Rida drinks this, the poison begins seeping through the body of Imam, and one narration says that Imam comes to his companion and says that, don't worry about me as I pass from this life. There will be a man that comes to take care of me, to shroud me, to do my ghusl and kafan. That man that will come is the next Imam. That is Imam al-Jawad, my son, who will come take care of me. But I have one last request before I pass from this world. What is it, O Imam al-Rida, says the man. Imam Rida says, remove all the carpets from the ground. In fact, remove the mattress from this ground. I want to lay on the bare floor. The companion says, why is it that you want to lay on the floor, O Imam? Won't you be more comfortable on this mattress? Imam says, just for a few minutes, I want to experience what my grandfather felt on the plains of Karbala. On the 10th of Muharram, as he was lying there in the sand, with nobody with him, as he was laying there, I want to experience what he felt on that day. On that day when my Imam went into the battlefield and he said, Hal min nasirin yansuruna. Is there anybody who can help me? He says, Hal min mughithin yughithuna. is there anybody that will come to our aid? If there is nobody that will come to our aid, is there anybody that can take these ladies of the Prophet's household and take care of them? Hussein stands beside his horse on that day. He sees that there is nobody to help him get on the horse. Just then Zainab hears Hussein crying. She says, my brother Hussein, don't worry, I will help you on the horse. Hussein mounts onto Dhul Jana. Hussein says al-wida to his sister Zainab. Then he says, Dhul Jana, now go to the Maidan. It is now time to fight. Dhul Jana is not moving. Dhul Jana is looking down at the ground. Dhul Jana is saying, Mawla, I can take you to the Maidan, but just look down at my feet. Hussein looks down at his feet. He sees a 4-year-old girl. Hazrat Ruqayya is holding on to the legs of Dhul Jana. Ruqayya is saying, oh Dhul Jana, everybody who goes to the Maidan, they don't come back. Baba, don't go to the Maidan. Hussein says, my child, I have to go. Ruqayya says, Baba, if you have to go to the Maidan, then I have one request for you, Baba. Baba, I have one request before you leave. Yes, Ruqayya, what can I do for you, my child? She says, Baba, Rudduni ila Medina. Baba, take us back to Medina before you go. I want to go back to Medina. Hussein says, oh my Ruqayya, you will never go back to Medina. After this, you will go to the prison of Sham, where you will pass away. Hussein lays there on the sand of Karbala. The most wretched of all the men comes forward. Shimr ibn Joshan comes forward with a dagger. He begins hitting it on a rock to make it blunt. The rivers are crying now. The oceans are crying. When it sees the neck of Hussein, but the dagger of Shimr begins crying. When Shimr sits, Hussein says, if you want to kill me, Shimr, then kill me. But at least give me some water before you kill me, O Shimr. Shimr refuses to give Hussein any water. Shimr stabs the neck of Hussein. Shimr cuts the neck of Hussein. Dhul Jana begins running back to the tents. Suddenly the land of Karbala is trembling. The women come out running in a panic. They say, Aina tarakta Hussein. Oh Dhul Jana, where have you left our Hussein? Sakina did not come running out. Sakina did not ask Dhul Jana, where is my Baba? Sakina, Ruqayya just says, Dhul Jana, Asuqiya Abi, Am Qutila Atshana. Oh Dhul Jana, did they give my Baba any water before they killed him? Or did he die thirsty? Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنقَلِبُونَ ماذا نفسه؟
يا حسين
يا حسين يا حسين